And behind 301, it got 700. Two-seat version of the A4 that had the in-flight refueling pipe on the side of it. All single-seaters had it almost immediately because you had to have it in that jet business. The main thing was it's called the drogue and probe system that still use it to this day. It came about as this entire operation. 797 on the next one too is another training command airplane. Notice our training command airplanes are all red and white. Well, when I was an instructor down here, they're all yellow. But in that period of time, somebody got the bright idea that they'd be easier seen in flight if you paint red and white. Well, once you get them in here, you can't tell the difference. So right now, somebody made a big deal. Change the colors anyway. There's PV4x2, V514. Back behind it here is the first of our long-range land-based patrol plane. We'll be up front here within the next week or two, I hope. This is a Navy version of the B-24. High-altitude bomber designed for that operation. The Navy needed a long-range land-based patrol plane, but they needed a low-altitude operation, so that's how the single tail on this that you normally can't see too well because the B-24 had a twin tail and a high tail. Same basic airplane. This airplane was utilized as our first of our long-range land-based patrol plane. Replaced what we call two turning and two burning, or P2B7, and then later on the P3 Orion. This airplane was, this particular bird here, was actually utilized as a fire bomber for several years out in Wyoming, and then they finished that. Brought it down here as the for the museum, so it was donated in that avenue. Now next up to it, it's got 266 on the nose, a Tomcat just like the one on the pedestal out in front. But this is an airplane that was utilized by Top Gun when Tom Cruise made that movie. Very popular. But this is what we talk is an air-to-air weapon system. In other words, F-14, beautiful airplane. In the movie Top Gun, if you're familiar with that movie, they use an A4 Skyhawk as the aggressor airplane. What Top Gun is all about is the airplane they're training with is training against airplanes of this similar type. Anytime they can find anything that's better or equal to, that's what they try to train against. This was taken out of service once again. It's just off a big airplane to have on the ship. It did not have that much reason to have it on there. The F-18 to pretty well take its role. 401 is a Korean dime airplane called a Cougar that was used at that time, strictly a day fighter. Next to that, number 23 on the nose of this airplane was simulate a MiG. In other words, when you get back into the Top Gun operation. Now, since they're using F-18 on it, by the way, when the movie Top Gun was filmed, the stage was down in Miramar in the San Diego area. That entire operation has since been moved to Fallon, Nevada, and they do have a splinter group as a division down at Key West at this time, but it's something relatively new. But what they have is airplanes like this that they're flying around once again, jumping the fighters when they can catch them out in the air. Now with this similar type, different manufacturers that we can find. 15 next to that is an Air Force trainer called a T-38. In other words, it's an airplane that you can see there the landing gear on an Air Force trainer is not near substantial because our Navy airplanes, when you come in the Navy, you always will take of landing on an aircraft carrier, but the landing gear has to be suitable for that type of operation. All out of the O-27 here. Now that's an A7 Corsair 2 design to replace the A4 Skyhawk. So as I say, it was quite an airplane, but the A4 is such an easy airplane to maintain, and the ultimate simplicity, and that's just almost the other way around. That's a remanufactured of the Air Force that the Navy had, an F-8 Crusader, a fighter, and that's a shortened up version of it. But the idea was, the F-8 Crusader has a 2 hydraulic system. They fixed that one, that they have a third one in it, but it's a hydraulic mess. But the good airplane might get in the air, but other than that, it's not bad. On this side, we got a 7236 is a airplane called an Albatross. In other words, this airplane was built to replace the Catalina as an open sea rescue machine. All three services had several upgrades of Korea and Vietnam operation. But the main thing was, if finally the helicopters that the Coast Guard has been using can do a better job. A fixed-wing airplane, you basically got to land a thing to do much rescue work. Well, what the helos can get, they can pull people off of freighters and think that they're still in flight if you don't even fly these things at heavy speed. Next to that, though, the red-nosed bird here is kind of an interesting airplane. We call it an A.J. Savage. The airplane was an airplane designed specifically to be able to haul the big nasty off the carrier that the Air Force had used the B-29 of Knox. So that's the type of airplane called an A.J. Savage. We call it 2 turning and 1 burning. There's a jet in the middle of that thing just to help it get off the ship. So it's real heavy. It's also got quite a bit of historical significance because it came one of the first tankers, in-flight tankers, that the Navy had. In fact, if you're familiar with the John Glenn thing where they went coast to coast, and a couple of F-8s behind that, trying to prove that they had the flexibility of in-flight refueling. But they pushed them off the carrier on the west coast, some cross-country, supposedly staying supersonic the entire way, and landed when Eisenhower was on the east coast. Tanking was one of these. A friend of mine was in that airplane that Glenn was able to tank them, but that's quite a deal on these things at that time. The next one to that is the second in our family of nuke bomb carriers. We call that thing the whale. In fact, there's one they call the Sky Warrior. A3D, the guys initially started calling this thing all three dead if it got down in the water. Once again, the initial design was kind of an offshoot of the B-66 overall shape. Obviously, for carrier operations, it had to be a lot heavier and all kinds of stuff. You had to be able to fold this thing up on the ship. You can imagine that vertical fin back there actually folds 90 degrees right there where that black line is below the leading edge spot. And then the wings tucked back ahead the inches. But it's an awful good airplane. It started calling the whale almost immediately. It's awful good spy bird, became a good nuke bird, and eventually became a tanker. So when Vietnam was going on strong, we had some of them out there that strictly were tankers that had 3 hoses coming out. Anytime you had a flight in the air, had these guys out there hanging on. You needed a drink, get back to the ship, and get on there. A friend of mine got hooked on one of those things. His friend of his got breathed and was breathing so bad they got him back to the ship. Dumped off on the boat, got him aboard, and then it had to shut the airplane. It was so fast. He had a hard time. He said, I didn't want to get his feet wet. And it's lucky that he even got back that far, because normally you would get in the water if you couldn't get a drink. 711 would stoop for the group. 754, or 3284 down here, and then 754 are all three of these airplanes, the ribbies of 334. 334 is what I flew off the carrier Hornet, initially hunting submarines with a smaller version of things, initially called the S2F1. This and S2F2 are free, but it was designed specifically to work with hand up with the helicopters and that environment for the anti-submarine warfare business. If we could carry anything in this thing that you could sink a submarine, have charges, torpedoes, whatever the case may be. When that thing is unfolded on in flight, there's a radome comes out the bottom end of it, and then there's a bad boom comes out the tail end of it that we're talking about. We fly over the spot that the sonar operator wants you to check out. That's the airplane we did it with. They needed some way to haul parts on off the ship, so they rounded the bottom and gutted it, and 754 is what we wound up with called the cod. And then, of course, the dome, the cod with the dome on top of it is an early warning version. If you get radar in line of sight, you get that thing up as high as you can, and then radar picture can be transferred back into the flight crew off the carrier. Get around the corner now, we got old Black 2 over there. This is an airplane called an F3D, a very early version of a night fighter concept. This airplane was designed specifically to be utilized in that environment. It's also shows an awful lot of influence by the German designers at that time. The low intake and exhaust systems, which also pretty well eliminate the land-based operation. Our carriers at that time all had wooden decks, so you couldn't use it on the ship that much. But F3D was designed, early concept. In other words, you had a system operator on the right side, the guy flying the thing, stick and throttle guy was on the left side. But some kind of radar in there that you could pick up a target and shoot it down with whatever kind of missile they had. 615 behind it there is the Convair 340. Now this is an enlarged version, because Convair built a smaller version they call the Convair 240 that they call T-29s. The 340 was basically an enlarged version built for the airline business, and that's where you see the nose wheel, and that makes it lots easier to sell passengers to get in the thing, and it's just like a bus inside, really comfortable. Now maybe about 35 of these things, of which 5 of them have a VIP in the nose of it, which spends most